Welcome. Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shar Barrett.
I'm Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. Welcome to the spa. You have the 4 spa girls with you for your listening pleasure and your viewing if you're on YouTube. and today we are talking about getting the words down, because sometimes that's the hardest part.
And it's our theme for the month.
Yes, productivity, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. So what do we mean by getting the words down? I know for me, like there's sometimes this idea you get lost in the marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like you get spend all this time there and suddenly you go, oh, I haven't actually written a book for like a month. Like maybe I should get back into that.
Yeah.
Think I'm a writer.
Oh gosh, I've got a deadline looming. What's happened?
Yes. Why am I?
Because let's face it, you can't market something unless it's written.
No.
And I think that's we get away from that. I mean, that 80-20 rule where 80% should be writing and the 20% should be everything else.
Yeah.
And with all the smoke and everything going on around us, like it's so easy to forget that. I think
very easy to forget that.
And you've got to say to yourself, what do I want? Do I need to write a book? And yes, if I need to write a book, then how am I going to write that book? And how am I going to sit down and get those words out? Because I'm very much like a magpie. I don't know if you have magpie everywhere else in the world, but the bright, shiny object, constant. Like I'll be sitting writing in a particular type and I'll just gaze somewhere else and then boom, I'm gone. So what I think you need to work out is what makes you focus and what makes you sit your bum in a seat. But I think before you get to that is, why do we write?
Yeah.
I mean, you've really got to work out passion. Your passion is writing, but that's not going to make you write. The motivation is what's going to make you write. And motivation, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy doing it, but when you sit down and you start, then the rest will come. But it's like if you say tomorrow I'm going to go out and I'm going to run 10Ks and you've never run. You're not going to sit down, you're not going to go out and run 10Ks, you're going to run 500 meters or you're going to run a K, right? That's how we would train for getting towards 10K. Well, writing is the same. I mean, I might write between 3,000 and 5,000 words a day, but that doesn't mean to say I started doing that.
Yeah.
I think we fail sometimes at making our goals too unachievable.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add that just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that's all you need. Because you can be passionate about friends or family or something that's really important to you, but nothing keeps it moving forward unless you put something into it. And I think being a writer, it has to be your time, like above everything else that you have to do as an author. And there's so much, especially with the more books you have, you have to work out how much time, and you have to make it happen, however that looks like for you.
Yeah, I kind of, every time you say passion though, I kind of think, oh, that's a really strong emotion. I feel like maybe passion, but maybe there's because I know there's lots of people who say to me, I want to write. I'd love to be a writer. There's a desire there. There's a thing, but it's not until you actually make the time, as Cheryl says, and actually get it done that you become a writer, I think. So
you can be passionate about the concept of being a writer though, right?
Absolutely.
That's where the passion comes from. I mean, you hear people say, writing's in your blood and writing's part of is like breathing and rah, but yet you don't get the words down. So in actual fact, you're doing yourself a disservice and your passion a disservice if you don't, because that's your passion, right? So, getting those words down. And I think we, like I say, start at 250 words a day,
Yeah. I think that's the key, is just it's very easy to look at others and where you want to be, but I think going back to that exercise or that running, whatever, mountain climbing analogy.
Why don't we start at, I'm just sort of thinking that's a further down the track, because what we wanted to talk about is, why do you write? And we've talked about this before, but I still think that's what gets you the motivation, don't you think? Like it's in your head of like, why do you want to write? Is it to and then every time you get stuck, or every time you're sitting there and you've written 200 words and you know you need another 50, you go back to that and say, this is why I want to write. Do you think that gives you motivation, or you don't even think, like, no?
I think now, I mean, this year, I've been writing since I was 21, you know, and I'm only 22 now, but, you know, okay, maybe a bit older.
World's youngest grandmother.
Yeah. No, but, you know, like, how many years later? 40 years later, and I still love what I do, but I think my motivations and my passions have changed.
Yeah,
They do. They adjust and they change, but I think you really need to work out what motivates you to write. But I mean, a lot of people have that sort of vision of, I want to be a writer because it sounds awesome and that's my goal. But you can have a goal, but you've actually got to work out how to reach that goal. So then you've got to take little chunks and you've got to go, okay, 250 words a day, or don't make your goals towards becoming a writer intimidating. I think that's the first thing that will block you.
And it's human nature, isn't it? We want the end result. We want the medal at the end of the race, or the book at the end of the race, but we want to fast forward to that, you know.
And I think lots of people like the idea of being a writer, like as in the sound of it, like, oh, I wrote all these books. It's like, I like having written a book, but I don't like the process of writing a book, as a saying I've heard people talk about.
How many people have you had come up to you and say, I want to be a writer? Can't be that hard, right? You know, that's my favorite. Just by the by, Blake, my husband sees my teeth grit and bear back like a feral beast, you know, but like, to some people, they don't see it as being hard until they start, and then you understand how hard it is.
To be fair, isn't that true of all of us though? How many times have you looked at an Instagram video of somebody creating like an abstract art piece and think, you know what, you know, couple of tubes of paint and a couple of canvases, I could do that, you know. I think it's I think it's human nature. I think it's human nature in many ways that we look at something and just you see the end result, but you don't actually realize. And I think for me, that's a myth that a lot of us still feel and buy into, is the myth of it's not hard work. It's like an expression of art doesn't necessarily align with actually it's a job and it's hard work and it's actually really hard to write. And I think we don't necessarily want to know that or kind of admit that.
I think that's an interesting point, because we talk about passion and having a passion for something, and there's almost this idea that either art or writing or whatever, or something that you're passionate about doesn't feel like work, and maybe sometimes it doesn't, and we get in the flow, but actually if you're doing this as a full-time living, sometimes it's just work. Like sometimes you just have to get things done,
and it's hard. Yeah, but also I think on top of that is until you actually make the decision that this is going to be your career, like you actually turn around. Like I tell a story often about when I decided people would ask me what I did, and I would say at this stage, I think I had a couple of books written, and someone would say to me, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm an administrator. I'm an office manager for a real estate company. And it wasn't until I turned around and said, well, actually, I'm an author or I'm a writer, because if you don't believe, then no one else is going, you know, like no one else is going to, but if you don't believe that you can be a writer, you won't be a writer. I think that's got to be the first step, right? Treating yourself, this is your job, this is your career, this is what you want to do.
I think even if you were working full-time or part-time somewhere else, you could slash it. You know, you could say, I work in an office and I'm an author. You could, you know, just to start putting it into play so that it's in the back of your mind that is who you are. Positive reinforcement. You know, I think it's massive.
And there's sometimes we tell ourselves these little stories. It's like, I'll say that I'm an author when I've got 2 books out, and I'll say that I'm an author when I've got 10 books, or I'll say that I'm an author when I've earned a certain amount of money, or I'll say that I'm an author when, you know, you're kind of like it's almost like shaming yourself, or like kind of being really down on yourself, just because it's like, no, if you've written a book, you've gotten to the end, that's, you know, you're a writer. That's, you know, that can be part of who you are. I mean, you may also be whatever, an administrator or doing other things, but you can also claim being a writer. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how do you go about it's a mental shift, right? You know, I used to get up and then look in the mirror every day and go, right, I'm an author, I'm a writer, this is who I am, this is what I want to be. And then I started to get my little patterns in place. So I was still working full time, I had children at home, and so I used to just sit down and find that slot in the day where I could write. It was uninterrupted, and it was my time, and that was, it's like a job. If you go into a job, you have to, at 9 o'clock you have to do this, or at 10, you know, whatever. Same thing, I have to write at 7 o'clock at night, or I have to write at 10 o'clock at night, or I have to write at 6 o'clock in the morning. You've got to find that place to do your writing.
So it was like creating a routine, if you like, as well, part of your routine.
But in any job you do, if you're considering it as a career, you always have to push yourself a little bit more. You have to do a little bit extra. You have to find the time to fit more into your day so that you get recognised. And I think that's what being an author is all about. It's finding that time, like when you said, wherever you can, and making sure that it happens. And it's not always going to be easy. I mean, goodness knows our lives haven't been, you know, without their ups and downs over the years, and writing has been hard, and we've all taken like little breaks and that sort of thing. But, you know, you just, if it's what you want, you have to find a way to make it happen.
And the words don't have to be perfect.
No.
And I think that's something that, you know, I used to rework my work constantly. And it wasn't until a lady told, a writer, historical writer, said to me, don't rework. Just if you find something, carry on, you know, like just put what you need there and carry on. I've said this before. And it wasn't until I got to and when you get the end of that first book and you go, the end, it's the most wonderful feeling, you know.
Even though you know you've got to do some edits on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
that's my problem. I'm an overthinker, right? And I like to overthink the work. And so and that stalls me, actually. And when I learnt to just keep writing, that was the one thing that got me to finish a book, and then I could go back and edit. And I have recently been trying to kind of front load some of the decisions and change, you know, so that I can do the plotting and stuff at the beginning. But I've kind of realized that I still need to just be able to keep going, and there's something in that keeping going, and not over stressing and not overly worrying about what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, and all, you know, am I doing the things right, or before you go, because that just holds you up, it just stops you. So that's another thing to,
and finding your process too, how you write, right, and which adjusts. So, you know, I'm a pantser, but Triddles is a plotter, and Shah's a plotter, and Cher's a hybrid of a mix of both, you know, like, I mean, and that's a work in progress too. So to think that you're going to start and know exactly how you're going to write a book, that's not going to happen. You know, I've plotted so many times it's not funny, and each time it's never worked. Damn it, I want it to work.
So if you're someone who has written and is stalled, maybe, or wants to write and hasn't even started, or, you know, like has reached some kind of block, what are some of the things that we've all done to kind of get the words down, to get it flowing again? Like, let's give some practical stuff.
I wrote in, we take turns each week doing our writing life post for our newsletter and our social media. And so one of the, I talked about a site that I really like. It's called Write or Die, and it has a kamikaze mode, and it's a timed writing, and it just stops that overthinking, because you can set it to a certain point where it actually, if your fingers pause the typing, it starts undoing what you've already typed. Now that is like the high level, but
I
it's
cannot
I can say that I feel a little sick.
I know, I feel icky. I'm just hearing those words.
It is the only thing that got me, like
that
single site is what got me over, because it's enforced. It's a little bit like, I used to joke that I needed somebody standing beside me with a SWAT to, you know, when I stopped working or stopped writing, like literally physically writing or typing.
So what is the block for writing something like that? What blocks you?
I think you end up in analysis paralysis, and there's it combined with a fear of every word must be gold kind of thing, and you get kind of stuck into that. It's really hard to get out of that. And so by setting up a structure, whether it's a site or whether it's doing a sprint or whether it's writing a certain number of words a day, like you're saying 250 or 500, that's a really good spot, because you can do like 250 words, basically like a paragraph, isn't it? So it's easy to get that down. And I think anything that you can stop getting into that analysis paralysis or that fear of it not being perfect is really hard to overcome for me personally. And so the Write or Die site, I mean, I've been using it for ages, and it's morphed, it's developed as it goes, but it was really good. Really good. It's a really good recommendation.
Okay.
Particularly for first draft, like you wouldn't do editing on it or anything like that, but yeah, gamifying it often helps.
That's for people who are overthinking and are expecting every word to be gold coming out of their thing, and it's just to help them kind of realize that it doesn't have to be, it just has to get the words down so that you can go back and edit.
To me, it feels a little bit like instead of going for a walk for exercise, you're standing on a treadmill and the treadmill is moving, so you're forced to walk. And in a way, that's what this feels like too. You're kind of forced to write and just put one finger in front of the other.
And so what about you, Cheryl? Like, what if you're in a moment where I can't be bothered writing, or you're struggling to write, what do you do?
Well, I think if that is your time for writing, then you have to do something. If it's not the actual writing, then you're writing something else. So for me, especially in the beginning, I don't do it so much anymore because I can get myself tangled up. I move on to another chapter. I move on to a bonus epilogue, which sort of falls into the line of planning, really, in a way, which I don't do a lot of. But, you know, I probably would do that further down the book if I was stuck with a resolution or whatever. I've written the last chapter before now as something different, and that will pull me forward. Or a different book altogether, something that I've been thinking about that's been in the back of my mind, bearing in mind that if I had a deadline, there is no excuse for not writing. But that comes with time, and that comes with, should I say, practicing your job. But there's, for me, it is kind of like gamifying it too, because you're not stepping away. You're not thinking, oh well, I'll go and vacuum, because that would be exciting. So it's still about the writing, because I might not have any time, especially when I had younger children. I might not have the time later on to do it if I didn't do it then, you know what I mean? So it has to be something pushing my career forward.
So you set yourself time. So this is really important, like scheduling time that is writing time, and then sticking to it. I feel like it's so, and even if you couldn't write the proper thing, then you write something so that that's that muscle kind of going, okay, this is writing time. And
I think the longer you leave it with not writing, the easier it is not to write.
I was just going to say that there's this whole thing of I think it was Brooke Castillo when I was doing all her stuff. She talks about like when you break your promises to yourself, and the more often you do it, the easier it is. So if you've said to yourself, I'm going to sit down and write, and if you get to that point, you go, oh, I just don't feel like it, I've got a bit of a headache, and you don't do it, then that's once. And then it makes it easier to break your promise to yourself the next time. So you want to really try, and how you get back, if you feel like you've already on that treadmill and you've already been breaking promises and setting times and you never do it, you start off small and you go, okay, I'm going to write for 10 minutes in this little break, and I'm going in this point, and I'm going to write however many words, if you need to say a number of words, and then you do it, and then you kind of go, oh, I did it, I kept my promise, and then you just keep doing it again and again. And it kind of fits in with what Wendy's saying with writing the 250 words, right? Like it's just making it so that it's something that you know that you can achieve, and then you'll build up the sense of trust within yourself, and then you build up the muscle as well. Like there is that, you build up the muscle and the ability, but you're also building up so that you know when you're going to go and do something. When you know that when you say this hour is going to be my writing time, then you actually go and do it. Because sometimes if I built up this, I'm at this point where I'm like, I don't trust myself to do that, and then it's almost like you give yourself permission to not write by doing that.
Everything, exercise, you name it.
It's all the same. Oh my god. So it's just like so create a time, and then do it, like Cheryl says. And then and also the deadlines, I think, is a big one, don't you think? Like for all of us, setting deadlines.
Yeah, pre-orders,
absolutely.
deadlines, they all work the same, don't they? You know?
They all work too. Like I would say the pre-order is like the biggest hammer. Then it goes back from there, whether it's booking an editor or whatever.
Some people
but
can't
for some
cope with
people,
it.
for my there's a fine line between when it works really well for some people, but in others it's almost too high. So it's a little bit like, I guess, trying it and seeing if it works, I would say.
I think also you got to be very wary of giving yourself a way out. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, if I give myself a way out,
oh, we're human, aren't we?
You know, that's it. I'll leap through that door. So I mean, to me, it's, if I get to the stage where I don't want to write, I just jam my headphones in, go for a walk around the house, and then get back in, and then I'm away. You know, like it's, I think until you make yourself, and I don't make it into something horrible, but it's, you have to sit down and write. There is no other option, right?
No, if you want to have
for
a book
me,
at the end of it.
this is my career, and 50 books in, and I'm just like, what am I going to write about today?
And I think that's really important, and that's actually very reassuring for those of us that are at the other end of the journey, to hear somebody with 50 books in, and the same for Cheryl and Trudy, that it's still times when you don't want to write. Like, this doesn't go away, you know. It might come maybe less, but there's still times when you don't. And I think that's another kind of myth buster, that, you know, suddenly when you become, you know, a trained athlete in the field of writing,
makes no difference. You know, like, I think you just label it differently, because it is your job. It's not something you can turn around and go, well, actually I don't have to do that because I'm going to go to my other job today. You know, once it becomes your life and it is your job and you have to do it every day. And that's another thing. Some people don't write every day. Some people write in chunks, and that's all good too. You know, like, do what works for you.
As long as the end result is there.
But you have to do it.
But even those people that do that, even those people that do that and don't write every day, they still have a plan for when they will write, you know, because they have to still get the words down, just in a different way at different times. But they know that, oh, well, Monday is my day for writing. Monday they write. You know,
and
it's not to oversimplify it. But
you're not going to get a temp in to do your job either. Like, that's the thing about writing. Writing is about you. You know, you're the one who's got to do it. So you need to get your head around how you're going to do it.
And then maybe find so many ways not to do it.
Exactly.
So I don't know if it helps people to think about it in terms of the end product, right? Like, so if you don't write today, here and now, in the hour that you've set aside, in 30 days time, or whenever, like in 3 months time, you won't have the book, and you won't be able to put it up, and you won't have anything to, you know, like there's the repercussions. I have this fridge magnet that I love, and it's like, what, and I'm trying to think of the words of it. It's like, what will you, in a year from now, what will you regret not having done today? And I always like that. It's like we kind of go in the moment, in the day, I'll write tomorrow or whatever, like I'll do it later, I'll you know, you have all these excuses in the moment. But if you think about the fact that if you don't write today, then the chances of you finishing your book in 6 months time is actually lower than if you did write, you know, like you're actually there's that, like you're thinking long term consequences. I don't know, do people, maybe people don't think like that.
There's another one like that says, what will tomorrow you thank you for doing today?
You know, I like that one. That's the one that gets me getting the dishes cleaned up at night, because for tomorrow, Sharon, I don't have to look at the dirty dishes.
She doesn't want to see that in the morning. No.
And even though I don't want to do it, I find that one, that way of tweaking it more motivating. Like, it's kind of, I'm giving a gift to myself for tomorrow, rather than the stick method, you know. So again, it goes back to know thyself kind of thing.
Whereas tomorrow, Trudy doesn't mind doing the dishes in the morning. She gets up and she bustles about in the morning and is quite happy doing that. It's probably too much information about my bad schedule,
but it's what works for each of us.
Cheryl's face, for anyone not watching the YouTube, is horrified that I can actually leave my dishes.
People, that's the key, I reckon. Do not go too big.
So
small bite size, you know. carry-ons.
So I was watching TikTok, and I want to mention this because I was, and there was a TikTok clearly thinks that I need to watch stuff about people with ADHD because I'm vaguely obsessed by that. I don't know. And some of the stuff they were talking about, recommending about how people with ADHD can get stuff done was actually quite relevant, I thought, for us as writers getting stuff done. So one of the things he mentioned was mini sessions. So you can just do 10-minute sessions and take a quick break. Like you don't have to sit down for 3 hours at one time. And we talk about Pomodoros all the time, but he was talking about even shorter chunks, like a 10-minute session, then a 3-minute break and a 10-minute session. And if that's something that's going to help you, I know that we've had people on who've talked about like Elena Johnson springs to mind, and I always remember her saying, she would do a 10-minute session while she was waiting for her son to get ready in the morning, and then she'd do another 10-minute session when she was waiting for something, like she, and I was always quite impressed how she could just do those little tiny sessions. So something like that was really cool. And then it was exercise, and Wendy's already mentioned this, the fact that when she's feeling unmotivated, she gets up and does exercise, and it doesn't again have to be massive exercise, right? Like it could be getting up and doing some squats or walked around the house 3 times, or
but it doesn't have to even be exercise. You can go out and pull a few weeds in the garden. I mean, it's just when you just change the scene and then come back.
I think it's also changing your physical state as well, like you're actually moving. And I think it can be very easy for us to sit at a desk and just get the brain's whirring, and then the negative self-talk kicks in because, oh my goodness, I should be doing this and I'm not. And I think that standing up, moving, and like you said before, Wendy, about having your music going, that can really change. It's about changing your state.
And I also think music can, like I've had the same music list since I just about started writing. And so when I put that in and that music comes on, my head just goes instantly.
You're just like a little Pavlov dog. You know exactly what you're supposed to do.
I'm a Pavlov dog. Exactly.
So that's a form of self-hypnosis, which
which I do the same.
I think for me is I'll just take my laptop and go to another place in the house, and I literally do that every day that I'm writing, and I do write most days, to be fair, but I've got a recliner in the lounge. I like my bed is really nice. It's very peaceful and quiet, and I can open up the ranch slider and hear the birds outside, or I can sit outside on the deck. It doesn't. You don't have to be sitting at a desk and staring at 4 walls. You don't. I mean, I have a really nice view of mountains, but sometimes you just want to change, and a change can actually reinvigorate you. Can give you a different kind of feeling for what you're writing. And I think that actually shows in your writing if you're just loving it in the moment.
The thing is also, like we want you to just get the words down. I mean, the second pass can be the one where you make them pretty, right? So I think don't get caught up in the perfection of it all. Like, don't be the perfectionist. I mean, if you saw my first draft, you would think a dog had just vomited it all over the page. It's like horrendous. Like no one's more surprised than me that when I do the 3rd and 4th draft, we're all good to go, But what I'm saying is, don't be so hard on yourself. Just get the words down, get the story out.
There's the saying, perfectionism is the enemy of done.
Oh yeah.
And it's actually like I remember watching something again. It wasn't TikTok, but it would have been YouTube or something. And this woman was talking about perfectionism and saying how it's actually a negative trait, and the and she was talking about the opposite of perfectionism, and it wasn't what you thought it would be. Like it was kind of like that actually perfectionism is a fear. We try to be perfect because we're afraid of something, and that we're actually it's like people say all the time, I'm a perfectionist, like it's kind of like a good trait. And I think we need to, as writers, realize that it's not, and it's something that's holding us back and keeping us from actually finishing the book and then putting out something that's out there in the world. Like
Paralysis is another one. Don't compare yourself to anyone else.
And sometimes don't compare yourself to yourself.
Like yours.
That book just flowed. This book is like pulling that. This is actually a true story. I was writing a book, a cozy mystery, which for me is going to be between 55 and 65k, and I got to about 40k, and I was just stalled. I was like, I don't know what to do with this book. It sucks. It's blah blah blah. So I stopped and decided to do my next draft, my second draft, and the book got up to, I think it was 67,000 words. I literally had to try and cull some because all of a sudden I knew what was missing. I could see what was missing. And I just, and it just flowed from there. So, just because something happened one way, the next book's going to be different probably. But yeah.
So you didn't actually get to like the end in that first 40.
Not quite. I
pretty
much knew what the ending was, but I hadn't tied it up. It was pretty ugly actually. The whole book was just not right. It was missing so much, and it was so glaring once I started right from the beginning, because like Wendy says, you don't want to keep going back and regurgitating that chapter one or even the first paragraph, which that's what you want perfect, that first paragraph, but it can wait. It can truly, truly wait until you finish the book or close to it.
Yeah. So the last thing about my ADHD TikTok was body doubling. And this is the idea that people with ADHD work better if there's someone else there with them to kind of be, and we talk about this all the time, right? Like doing writing sprints with other people around you, and or going to a cafe. We write at cafes quite often, or on Zoom we write together and things like that. So it's just intriguing to me that these ideas are kind of something that's completely relevant for all of us. So, and I totally work and write better when I have other people around me. Sometimes I can just chatter more, but if I've got people who are actually kind of motivated, like the other Spa girls, to keep me on track. So I feel like I'm the weakest link here with this whole motivation thing when I start saying these words out loud.
No, that's self-judgment, which I think all writers are very, very good at. So there's nothing about this. Like, I think the whole thing is we're all works in progress. And I think it's very easy to look at an accomplished author or somebody that's, maybe finished 2 books when you still haven't finished your first one, and think they've got it all together, or they're better than, and it's not at all
just a ruse.
It's not at all the case.
I think we all compare.
That's human nature too, I think.
And like you said,
we like seeing the end result, but we don't necessarily see how the sausage is made.
The best writers in the world would compare themselves just like the best athletes would, just like, everyone compares themselves. It's just human nature, but you really should only compare. Like Cheryl said, it's about you, it's about how don't compare yourself with yourself on your last book or whatever, but it's about you sitting down and getting it down. Don't worry about all the other stuff going around the periphery. It's about you writing.
And I actually think that's a good point, and I don't have the answer to this because it's not a situation I personally experienced. But how do you guys get over, so we've talked about a little bit about negative self-talk, which I think we can all do a good job on that one, but how do you get over the chatter when you're writing of the things that you should be doing, like on the other side of the business, the marketing side, the wide KU, should be newsletters, all of that? How do you shut that noise down in order to write? Or do you, or don't you? Like, that's another part of it.
I think you have to shut it down at the time. If you're writing, that's what you're doing. But you have to give it some thought. You have to give it a lot of thought, and it does take a lot of time. And I don't know if the 80-20 rule applies when you've got quite a few books out. I know Wendy probably feels the same way. There's just so much to do when you've got more books out. So I really, really enjoy that first and second book. I'm just saying. But I think finding one thing to do at a time rather than doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that might make it easier for you. It has for me.
I actually think that's a really good point. It's like when you're trying to do all the things, you actually achieve none of the things.
Yeah.
Or you do achieve them mediocre.
So maybe just writing and maybe a couple of marketing things, and then just leave it at that. Like, don't try to be everything, because it'll just drive you nuts.
I think you've got to work out what's working too. Just because X, Y, and Z are doing TikTok, or X, Y, and Z are doing Facebook, or X, Y, I think is you doing 5 channels mediocrely, is that a word? I don't know, averagely well, affecting your sales, or as I think that's something you really have to work out, is that what's going to benefit you. Rushing around doing 15 things when you're not getting your writing done is not benefiting you, because the next book is what's going to sell.
And I want it to be
that's
the best book possible, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think you should
absolutely.
always be focusing on making it the best
And
book
don't
possible.
shortchange your books. Don't just like, oh, I've got to write blah 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 blah. You know, like this is your what you're selling. This is your product. Make it good.
I had a little comment on a post that I saw from a woman that I really, really like, and she's struggling a bit with her writing, and she's probably listening, so I'm not going to mention any names. But and she had this conundrum about her first book not doing well. I don't know what that meant in terms of sales or anything like that. It's not my business, but and she was saying she thought she'd made a really big mistake in going wide with her first book, and that she should have put it into KU. And my comment to her was, why don't you give KU a try now for 90 days? Because at the end of the day, when it's your first book and it's not going so well, you've lost nothing. You've lost nothing by trying something different. And it's a great book. It's a fantastic book.
Yeah,
my friend.
And that goes for the writing as well. Like, it doesn't hurt to try something new. If you're like stuck and you don't seem to be getting the words down, try something new. Like, gamify it. Like, for me, we used to work like, I'd time myself for half an hour, and then I'd see how much I'd written in that half an hour, and I'd write it down. And then the next half an hour, or 25 minutes if I was doing a Pomodoro.
Trudy is fiercely competitive.
And then I'm competing against myself, right?
And
like,
we would
so
compete
try and make more
sometimes,
words.
right?
Yes, we've done it.
We would compete sometimes, wouldn't we?
Ever compete with Wendy.
I mean, Wendy is the pro, but I would always be like, well, I got closer this time to Wendy. I was almost there, you know. But that's kind of stuff.
I learned to type when I was a kid. You know, I've been typing, not looking, and typing for years.
I'm a fast
Yeah.
typer too, but
I'm way faster than you, mate.
Let's have a competition. Next time we are typing.
No. I don't compete with you because you just get rabid. You're like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like competing with my son. Man, he's the same. No.
So we're talking about typing, the physical act of writing. But another thing we covered in podcasts previously, haven't talked about it for a little while, but there's also dictation, and actually just changing up the form of how you get the words down can also help. I mean, I can talk into my phone, there was the whole train your dragon, like for dragon naturally speaking, but I think, you know, honestly, phone apps are getting so much better these days. It's almost like we've all got a dictation already inbuilt into our phone.
Dragon. And it's a great setup.
Yeah, and now you can get like the automatic transcription service. Like it's and so that could be a way as well. Like there is something quite freeing about speaking. For some people, not everybody, but for those that are good auditory processes, that can actually be very freeing.
My mind locks up.
Yeah, mine does too. I'm like, I've been talking my whole life. But
I think again, like anything, there is an aspect of training yourself almost, like it is a practice too. But if the thought of actually sitting down at your desk or whatever, that could be just a way to get over that hurdle.
It took me 5 years to get reasonably comfortable being on the podcast. Talking to my phone, and even though I'm not the only one that's going to listen.
There is something magical, though, I have to say, about seeing those words coming across the screen when you upload it or whatever, and it's there, and it's like, wow, that gave me a head start of, you know,
anyway. It's
cool.
But that's the point, right? The point that we always make. It's like you have to find your own process, and if it's something that works for one person, it's not necessarily going to work for you, but there will be something that works for you. There will be a way to get more words down. There will be a way to be more productive. There will be a way. You just need to try a few different things, test it out. Sometimes it's not what you think it's going to be either. Do you find that? Yeah. Sometimes I think that would never work for me. Don't be ridiculous. And then 5 minutes later, I find myself doing it.
Yeah,
and then it works, right? So,
And so, just in terms of the quantity, shall we say, of publications too, that varies from writer to writer as well. And there is, again, no one right way. I mean, you know, the rapid release schedule, which I guess by necessity, you know, we've had authors on the podcast that are publishing twice a month, not their shorter word lengths, of course, but to others that are publishing once a year. There's different strategies, and so some people are just not going to be, so again, it's that whole don't look at other people as a measurement of yourself kind of thing.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter how many books you write.
So you guys, so Wendy, you've written 50, Trudy, you're 20 something, Cheryl, you're must be close to 40 by now. So do you guys find you're getting faster, or is it about the same pace in terms of maybe 20 books ago or 30 books ago when you're writing? What do you think you've got faster?
I think you start worrying about different things as you go along. Like when you start out, you kind of you've almost got a freedom because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And then as you get along, you kind of go, oh wait, no, there's this other thing that I have to incorporate. And oh wait, there's this thing. And then you've got the expectations of having previous books that have sold, and now you want to write another book, like there's actually different things that happen as you go along in your career.
So different kind of pressures, self pressures, if you like.
Fine tuning. You fine tune the process, right? Like, I mean,
I think maybe you get a bit more consistent.
Like you might write faster, maybe just on a like per half hour you might be able to write 2,000 words instead of 1,000, but it's
I think you write better because Wendy and I were talking about this the other day, was getting an edit back, and how many things you have to go through to do it. And every now and again you'll get an edit back that you do need to do a lot more work to, but on the whole you've learnt more things, so you don't make those mistakes. You might make others, but so you have progressed in that, and I guess that
I think you know yourself
faster.
You're writing better too. I think you know your processes and you know you're writing better. I know myself, if I go write myself into a corner and I'm just like, that was happening, it's just like, okay, back it up, and away you go, and stuff, and I know when I hit 30,000 then I start to rewrite, and then I'm away, like I think I know that I'm just going blah 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 to 30,000, and then I can get to my story.
So you don't get to the end of the story, you go back to the start once you've written that 30,000?
Usually, depending on the book, but that's how the process usually works. I get to about 30,000, and then I know where the story's going, and so then I can go back and pad it out, and usually get it to about 50, and then I've only got 20, 25, 30 to go. So, that works for me. It's different when it's like I'm writing the 11th book in a series at the moment, and that's just like hell, no other word for that. But I think the process of writing I think it evolves constantly. I know it does, like every book's different. Gotta love it. And sometimes I love it and sometimes I hate it.
But I think one thing that you would all have in common is that you've got, like Trudy was saying before, almost like that self belief or that self confirmation that you can finish a book. And I think that is a different place to come at it.
It's always doable now.
Whereas
in the beginning you didn't think it was. Even after the first book, you start writing the second book and you're like, what was I thinking? I can't write.
The two very best words, the end, like it's just like you get that book done, you just slam that computer down like, whoa, and my husband always goes, are we there yet? And I'm like, yeah, we are. So the process still doesn't.
And one thing, there's also something I've noticed as an observer of you guys is that there is almost an amnesia that happens when you're writing, each of you, particularly Wendy, that you forget what you were like the previous book, and so there's still this expectation that you're going to finish it and you think like that's the best thing I've ever written, or that wasn't too bad. And for the last 50 books we've been reminding Wendy, she said this exact same thing, because she's like, that's the biggest pile of
I'm trying to change that. But and everyone says if you don't love it, no one else can. But it's a process, by the time the book's published, it's okay,
Actually, I think that's another good point. Just talking a little bit, I'm really keen to sort of, because I know I succumb to a lot of myths, so I'm trying to bust them for other people. And it's something that we've had authors talk about a lot, which is sometimes the words flow and sometimes it's like trying to get blood out of a stone.
It's like wading bollock deep through
That's
porridge.
the one, when you're wading through concrete. But when there's space and when the book's finally published, very often the ones that flowed are not anywhere near superior to the ones where you just felt like you were just, it was like one word carved out of stone at a time, or you can't remember which one flowed and which one didn't. And often the ones that felt really were the better sellers than the ones where it just was like,
you just never know.
Yeah,
I don't think you could say either way. Either
you
way,
can't
right?
judge us. You can't judge it. You're not, when you're in the process of it, you don't know what the end result's going to be, kind of thing, in terms of how it's going to be received. Maybe, I don't know.
Just like you love one of your books more than another.
Yeah,
it's exactly what readers are like. Some of them will just
and how many times we heard somebody say that their breakout book, or the one that really got them attention, was the one that like, this is a bit weird, or
but I mean, I've heard people say that their breakout book was the one that flowed and was their book of the heart. People say all different things. There is no one way, and there is no one rule about any of that. It's just do what you can to get the words down and get the book done. And then,
bottom line is, to get the book up, you have to write the book.
And I think
there's no way around that.
We've talked about it before, but it's something that helped me get over that kind of I can't write 50,000 or 60,000 or 70,000, is writing a shorter book. And we've had a number of authors talking about the experiences, and for example short romance, where you're sort of looking at 10 to 20,000 Ks. There is a lot of that sort of self-confirmation, or that self confidence that comes with actually writing that end legitimately on a shorter work. So if you're struggling to finish, maybe look at writing a short story or a short novella or whatever, just to kind of get
But also on the other flip side to that is, if you're a writer that's written 3 books and you're struggling with your 4th, that's not going to work, because there's an expectation. You've got 3 published, the 4th will follow, and writers do get blocked. I mean, well,
that's a whole nother, almost a whole nother
in
topic.
the middle of a series. But anyway, I think we've probably rambled on a bit there anyway. I just for me, I just want to say, it is hard. It really is hard, but you have to really think about why you're doing it and what you want from it. And that is, you want to be a writer. So start believing that you are a writer, and start sitting at your seat and writing the words down. And there is no other. We can't offer you anything else there. You are the only one who can get those words down. And when you do, you will feel better for it. And I think the thing is, if you are blocked, well, personally for myself, if I'm in a really bad place with my writing, I just sit down and write, and it can be absolute garbage, but the good stuff will come. And
it's true. It is true.
And that's something you need to believe in.
It's hard to believe, I think. But
just find your process. Find your process towards it. Forget what everyone else is doing. This is about you. This is your journey.
Sometimes the hardest bit is actually sitting down. And I think that's in sitting down to actually write. Like, you can find all the excuses in the world. Once you've sat yourself down, you put your fingers on the keyboard and you start typing, even if you know that it's not what you want it to be, it will become, it will get there, like you say.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. My plants, I wander around the house picking dead leaves off my plants constantly, because I don't want to sit down at my desk, look, there's a dish, or I didn't get something up for dinner, or maybe I need a coffee, I just need to call my mum, we've all got that, but the bottom line is, buck stops with you. There's no other way around it. You got to get those words down, sit down and write.
It's a perfect way to end it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it. Buck stops with you. Awesome. All right.
I love it.
Well, so all of you need to stop listening to this podcast now that we've come to the end, and go and write.
We want to hear about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, tell us about it. Come into the Facebook page and tell us about your writing,
your experience.
So where can we be found?
So we can be found at spygirlspodcast.com if you'd like to support the show, and we absolutely appreciate and love our supporters. Everything from buying us a coffee upwards is at patreon.com/spygirls or /spygirls podcast.
Awesome. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. I hope we have inspired you and made you want to go away and write. If not, come and tell us about it and we'll try again. I don't know.
Any particular writing tools that we haven't mentioned, let us know that
let
too.
Us know. But otherwise, we are heading off, and we'll see you again next week. But for now, farewell.
Bye.
Bye.